Hi, this is Aaron Negherbon, the founder of Troops Direct. You know us and you know us well because we're the only ones in the nation that do what we do, and that is getting our service members, wherever they are on the globe, the critically needed items that they can't access through the military supply chain for whatever reason. Medical, tactical, canine, communications, anything operational that enables them to do their job effectively and get back home safely to their loved ones. A lot of stuff has happened in the past few days as it pertains to the Middle East, namely Iran. And I think all of the information that we've got, we're getting from the same sources in the news. A lot of my information comes from there as well. A lot of it comes from friends in the battle space or in the defense industry. So I just want to take a few minutes and share my perspective on a few things for you to consider, for you to agree or disagree with. I'm open to hearing all those things. The first thing is I certainly believe that everything that we had to do with Iran was necessary, warranted, and in my opinion, long overdue. But now we're working with them to make things right. People can say, oh, this is all about Israel and, helping them out. Well, I don't know if it was or not. If Israel, our ally, benefits from this, then so much the better. I think that if Iran, the good people in Iran, sees this opportunity, there's a wonderful nation to be had there that generations that precede the current ones can still harken back to the 70s and before the takeover. So with that all said, I'm hearing, that they're sending more troops over. It's absolutely right. They are. And this thing is not going to be over next week. I think it's going to be a long, ongoing thing. Are we going to be pummeling Iran with munitions on a daily basis for the next 2, 3, 4 months? No, I don't believe we will whatsoever. Do I think Iran is going to capitulate and say uncle at some point? Frankly, I don't expect them to. Their actions so far and in the past demonstrate that that's not their MO. What it must remind us of is the fact that our troops are still out there doing what this nation calls for them to do. And sometimes it's the pilots flying the fighters and the bombers. Sometimes it's the the people on the ships that are launching the missiles, and it's everybody in between, and it's all the logisticians, it's everybody on the ground, it's all that support and things like that. But the bottom line is that it's Americans, humans, not robots and all that stuff that are conducting these operations. And that is our troops. It's our children, it's our grandchildren, it's our friends, it's our sons, daughters, nieces, and nephews. And we cannot forget that while this event is highlighted, we have Americans on the ground, in the dirt, doing stuff in Africa, in the Middle East, in Central America, in the Pacific, in Europe. Our troops are everywhere. And a lot of the time you don't hear about what they're doing. And kind of like what Pete Hegseth was saying today in the morning, today's Monday, March 2nd, as I'm talking about this, he says, you guys don't need to know, talking to the press, about everything that we're doing. And I agree with him 100% on that. Our troops, whether it's your Tier 1 SEAL Team 6 Delta Force guys or your Tier 2 Green Berets, Rangers, and all that stuff, or your big Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, they need to do what they do in private and in silence so they can do things effectively and without everybody looking over their shoulder and broadcasting or forecasting their actions and all those things. But again, with that said, every day here at this desk, our inbox rings with requests from service members around the globe requesting support for items that they can't get. And again, it's the same things over and over. We need medical. We need cold weather gear. Our communication systems do not work. We've had them for 6 years and they just don't work. And we've asked for new ones, and our supply or higher command has said, make do with what you've got. We hear, hey, we need to reach into our own pockets. I've got a baby that was born, one said, I will never forget this, and I have to choose between gear for myself or diapers for my newborn as I go out the door. And that statement is only a few months old. This is not something from 15 years ago in the earlier days of Troops Direct when Iraq and Afghanistan were hot and heavy and all over the news. This is stuff that is still going on today. I can tell you from this desk here in McKinney, Texas, we are corresponding with SEALs, Green Berets, Marine Corps Raiders, Big Army, big Marine Corps, etc., all over the globe for stuff on a daily basis here, and they're out there doing the stuff that they do. So let's not think, America, that events like Iran are isolated things and everybody else is back home. And I think that if we look at what happened down in Central America and the operation to get Maduro, that demonstrates in a very kind of cool scheme the fact that it does take Americans on the ground, in the boots, doing what they do to accomplish missions. And while that was a high profile event, it highlights that our troops are still out there. And I can tell you there are a lot of other service members down in Central America and other places as well. We cannot forget that they're out there. We cannot forget that they have basic supplies that they just don't get, or stuff that when they get there to wherever they're going, they realize we're here and we need this, and it wasn't issued to us. We didn't know we needed it, or we were told that that item is here for us, and here we are, and it's not here and we need it. So many variables exist once you're on the ground. And if you're watching this and you're active duty or a veteran, I would hope that you would agree with me. And if you don't agree with me on that, then God bless you, because it sounds like your time in service and your deployments were maybe easier than some of your brothers and sisters that were in at the same time. God bless what you did, but there are still Americans that need stuff. With that said, I ask that every day you remember that. So when you hear support our troops, that's not something from 15 or 20 years ago, or almost 30 years ago now, as we round the corner into 2001, almost 30 years. Regardless, you understand my point. I will digress and move on to another point that is, I think, of even more importance to us as Americans here in the United States. And that is a concern that I have, that some people laugh at me about, and other people nod their head in agreement. But when I watch interviews from individuals like Sarah Adams, and if you don't know who she is, I would recommend that you look her up. But Sarah Adams was a real sharp cookie inside of the CIA. And her comments about a year ago in an interview suggested that there were 10,000 or so trained terrorist fighters, primarily Al-Qaeda, inside the United States that we knew of. In a more recent interview, it was brought up that that number may be closer to 18,000 that we know of. And that came from one of the counterterrorism centers back east. And my concern is not that we're going to have a 9/11 perhaps where jets fly through the Twin Towers or into the Pentagon, but other more refined and specialized events that will impact us from actual terrorists inside the United States. I am not some prepper. I'm not some saber rattler. I'm not some guy that says I've got, 4 plate carriers in my truck and 50 guns and bring it on. I'm not that guy. I'm the pragmatic individual who has a lot of people that agrees with him, that says bad things can happen here. And we need to keep that in mind, because, just over the weekend, we had an attack in Austin, Texas, and everything from the outside suggests that that was, in fact, a terrorist action based on what the individual said, what he was wearing, and evidently from things that were found in his car. We look at, other acts of terror in our homeland, big or small, but the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that's something that we really need to be keen on. Our cops on the street that we pass every day, they're out there doing their best. And moreover, we have people, in other intelligence agencies that are doing their best. But that is a big concern to me still. And if people want to laugh at, 18,000 trained fighters, well, why can't we find them and all that? Well, it's a little more difficult in the United States with, the First Amendment rights and things like that, and being able to track someone down based on what they said or detain them based on what they said versus their actions. There's so many little things, and I don't want to get into those nuances. But the bottom line is that while we have our troops protecting us from afar, we also have our National Guard here. We have troops at the border. We have our law enforcement and other internal agencies that are working to protect us. But I think that the potential next front, not like Red Dawn, not like, a civil war kind of thing, but the next potential front could be, unfortunately, here in the United States. And I don't believe that it's going to take the form of, tanks rolling down the street and all those kind of things, and one city's taken over and they're fighting another city. No. But I think that it's going to be something where our troops are going to have to act in a more overt fashion in the United States in certain circumstances to deal with events that happen here inside of our borders, inside of the continental United States. So I ask that you keep that in mind. And again, I am not an alarmist. I'm far from it. Since I founded Troops Direct in 2016, in 2010, 16 years now, and even long before that, so many people that I've spoken to that are in the defense industry, in government, and in the military have really helped to shape my view on how things are. I think once upon a time there was like ooh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And now it's really okay, let's look at the facts and what is happening, or what has happened, and how do we mitigate that? And I look at it from kind of a steady and mature outlook. And so some people may not agree with my opinions, and others might. But I believe that we do need to keep an eye on what's happening in the homeland. Who's to blame for it? Some people say, oh, Biden did this, or, Obama did this, or Trump did this, or whatever. Fine. But the fact remains is that intelligence dictates or suggests that this threat exists. But again, all the while, we still have our troops overseas. President Trump has said there may be more casualties as a result of what's going on in Iran. Those are human casualties. Those are our troops, our service members who raised their right hand and pledged an oath to this nation. And we can't forget that it is the human asset that makes these endeavors successful. And while it may be pilots or sailors, it's also the boots on the ground that probably aren't getting any publicity for good reason. So in closing, I ask that you take my points to heed. I'd love to hear your opinion on them. I'm not going to give you the old like and subscribe thing, and give me your comments below to increase the read on these posts. But I want to hear what you think, because it's important to me to learn from other people, just as I like to think that some people have learned from me. I will say that we do have requests every single day coming in from the troops. And I'll be honest with you, there are more requests coming in than we can fund. And these are vetted requests. Every request that comes in, we pick up a phone and we talk to people that we know in the military high up and say, is this legit? Is this not legit? We get some yeses and we get some nos, and we sort them appropriately. But if you're the kind of individual that says, you know what, Aaron, I have the ability financially or whatever to make sure that any medical request that comes through, that's handled, please let me know. Or you say, I want to make sure that any requests for communications or for Navy SEALs or Marine Corps or Green Berets or 10th Mountain Division or Rangers, let me know, because it's Americans like you and like me that make sure that our service members have what they need to accomplish their missions and return home safely to their families. So in closing, thank you for listening to me, and feel free to contact me anytime, Aaron@troopsdirect.org, or visit us at troopsdirect.org. Thanks a lot.